Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to Season 4, Episode 18 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, usually your analyst, Nick Cap. Joining me is, well, nobody. You got me solo this week. Nick is on the West Coast on vacation, so we're going to stick here for about an hour. I'm a little bit sick this morning, so we're going to grind it out for about an hour, get through all the games, get through all your questions, and then we'll get into Sunday football. If this is your first time watching, thank you so much for joining us this Sunday. Check us out on all our social media platforms. The best platform to watch the live stream is YouTube. All your questions get pushed through. We can bring them right on the screen like this to start the show. So we'll get right into it. If you are on YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, everything to do, and hit that notification bell. So every single Sunday when you wake up, roll over, see your phone, and you can just click that button and hop right into the stream. So first question from Lex: start Dobbins or Aaron Jones this week? Full PPR. I have Aaron Jones on my all-bust team. He has been very inefficient. Ty Chandler has been outplaying him really for the beginning of the season. And J.K. Dobbins has been exploding. I know it's a tougher matchup against the Steelers. He'll really get pushed this week. But I would rather take J.K. Dobbins knowing his workload behind that offensive line than Aaron Jones with his inefficiencies. Now, I will say with the PPR upside of Aaron Jones, that is definitely the higher ceiling play. But I do think Dobbins has shown enough this year for me to really want to roll with him. Good morning to some of the guys. We're going to jump a little bit. Joe, Scott, good morning to you guys. Thanks for joining the stream as always. Stanley, congrats to my Jets. Listen, man, finally look good for a game. We gotta appreciate that. So we'll take it. Right back to Lex's second question. Thank you for hopping in before the stream started. If you're not here, hopefully you can run it back to the start and you can get these answers real quick. Need one running back, one wide receiver, one flex. Cam Akers, Carson Steele, Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman. I would roll out Najee Harris. I think he's the safest running back with the safest floor. I would then actually pivot off Pittman to Deontay Johnson. I think that Andy Dalton is a solid backup. I think he's going to be better than Bryce Young was with that offense. In the games where he did play with Carolina, he averaged over 300 yards per game. And Deontay has always been a safe floor because of the workload, and he is the clear wide receiver one there. Actually, like Adam Thielen a lot in DFS this week. I think those receivers have potential to do some damage if Max Crosby's not playing at 100%. So I think the receivers are going to have a little bit more upside than we think. And then I would go with Cam Akers as my number 3. No Mixon, which means that it should be the Cam Akers show all day. So I'm pretty happy to roll him out. I'm pretty confident that his floor is going to be there. Next question, Stanley. PPR, I have Madison, Zamir White. Can't take out Mason. Wouldn't that be nuts? Plus my QB is Hurts. Okay. So if the question is Madison or Zamir White, I would go with Madison. I think he's looked better. He's been getting a lot more of those first, second downs. He gets a lot more use in the passing game than Zamir White does. So he, to me, is more of a clear RB1, and this is kind of the matchup to play those running backs. No problem, Lex. Appreciate you stopping by the stream every single Sunday. Always feel free to drop your questions. 8 a.m. We try to get live before every other live show. Everybody's always live at 11:30 to get you the injury news. We want to get in there earlier, help you feel comfortable when you start your morning with your lineup. So, all right, we're going to start going into the week-by-week games. It's an interesting week. Last week, we kind of had some bottom feeders versus bottom feeders and some top dogs versus top dogs. Similar situation here, but a lot more question marks around some teams. So for fantasy, the way we really do this is I'm going to give you guys what's important for you to know in the game, and then kind of what questions do we need answered. First game of the slate, according to ESPN, from the 1 o'clocks, we have the Giants at the Browns. Pretty much a corner game. No one's really going to want to see this on the main feed unless you're one of these two fan bases. I want to see if Malik Neighbors can continue to do what he's been doing for weeks, which is, well, last week and I guess week 1. The workload was there. He's been super, super solid. And I want to see if he can maintain that. The Cleveland Browns defense has not been great. They've not forced a turnover this year. They're definitely going to do that against Daniel Jones, who's turnover worthy on every single play. So when you got a guy like Denzel Ward, that's the best corner that no one Malik Neighbors will have faced so far, but he's a super freak athlete as well. So curious to see how that matchup goes. I think Malik Neighbors is shaping out to be a superstar in this league. Let's see if he can do it in the toughest defensive matchup he's had so far. From Joe, Cam Akers or Justice Hill. Also thoughts on Britton Covey as a sneaky play. No, I will pass on Britton Covey for sure. If I could start Cam Akers or Justice Hill, I'm going with Justice Hill. I don't care about projections on ESPN or Sleeper or what those numbers say. Justice Hill has been playing 52% of the snap share. They're going up against the Cowboys. Lamar is going to need to pass in this matchup. They're 0-2 for a reason. They have not looked great. Justice Hill is also getting work on the ground. The upside is significantly higher. Cam Akers going up against Minnesota. Minnesota has allowed the fourth least amount of points to the running back position. I like Cam Akers because he should have a guaranteed workload, but I would definitely trust the upside of Justice Hill more, that snap share, that passing work, that Cam Akers probably isn't going to see. As much as I do like Akers, we know that Dameon Pierce did not play very well last year in this offense. So Joe Mixon definitely elevated it from a talent perspective. Cam Akers is on his second team because the talent's not there. So I hope he gets the resurgence on a good team, but it's more safe and more upside for Justice Hill than it is going to be for Cam Akers. What's up, Deshaun? Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. As I mentioned at the start of the show, Nick, my co-host, usually the host of the show, on vacation on the West Coast. We weren't going to do him dirty, make him wake up at 5:30 to get you guys some questions. So I'm here for an hour. We'll bang some things out. I'll help you guys in any way you need, give you quick analysis. Should I play Zamir White or Madison? White is struggling. Yeah, absolutely. I'm playing Alexander Madison all day over Zamir White. I gave you the stats a little bit earlier. He's in on first and second down more often than we thought, and he's getting passing down work and touchdown goal line work. Zamir White just is not a safe play anymore, and I imagine by next week or 2 weeks from now, we're talking about him as a waiver wire guy. From Mark, hello, everybody. Jaden Reed with no love or Tajay Spears this week, half PPR. I think Tajay might be out. Let me take another look. I know he's been dinged up like all week. But I would still lean on Jaden Reed. I don't love it without Jordan Love as much, obviously. I actually would like to see if you have another pivot option. So I would probably go with Jaden Reed if it's just these two options. But Tajay has not been as great as I was hoping for. It's really been more of the Tony Pollard show over there. Covey had 6 catches last week. He was a hot wide receiver. So feel free to stash him if you want. My thought is every receiver different weeks is going to have one of those boom weeks, one of those safe floor PPR weeks. So you need to see it multiple weeks from a guy to kind of trust them really in your lineup. So I'm not really going to trust the guy that has not proven it. But if you want him to be a safe or, an upside waiver wire guy that you sit on your bench, go for it. And then if he explodes, you feel like you got a league winner. So I would rather do that than rely on a very risky player, a guy that we don't know much about. So that's kind of the way that I usually feel about these interesting one-off guys. All right, getting back to the schedule, we have Green Bay at Tennessee. Over under one of the lowest on the week, 37.5. And I care about those numbers. I think that matters a lot for fantasy, especially when you talk about guys that are touchdown or bust. So Josh Jacobs, a guy I really like. I've liked on the season. Like I've said, the one thing Malik Willis can do really well is turn around and hand the ball off. That's kind of the only highlight of his career is handing it to Derrick Henry. And last week we saw 32 touches for Josh Jacobs, 150 yards. Was a phenomenal game for him. Tennessee side of the ball, Tony Pollard, expect an electric day from him going up against the Green Bay defense, which has allowed a ton of points to the running back position. I really like that matchup. In terms of receivers, The only one I guess you could really get away with is Calvin Ridley. I don't love the Packers receivers in this matchup. The Tennessee defense has been a lot better than people have given them credit for. They've looked a lot better on film. And L'Jarius Sneed is one of the best cover corners in the league. So I don't love the matchup for this team, but if you were to start one, Jaden Reed would be the answer. From Mark, no better options than Jaden Reed or Tajay Spears, other than Zach Ertz. I should have listened to you last week, picked up Braylon Allen, but I missed the opportunity. Hey, it's all good, man. Hopefully, you can make up for it. What's going on with your team? You got some injuries or something? Like, what's holding you back from some of the deeper flex options? Also, who's the top guys on the waiver wire? I mean, I've seen Tajay Spears dropped in a lot of leagues. It wouldn't be uncanny to do that, frankly, especially with how good Tony Pollard's looked. So give me some of those options, and we'll see if we could find you somebody to start or a spot start this week. Is Demarcus Robinson worth playing, meaning the hot receiver? Yes, Demarcus Robinson is definitely worth the start with all the injuries to those Rams guys. I would expect the game script to be the 49ers are up and we are playing catch up as the Rams team. So that should mean Matthew Stafford's throwing 40 plus times, which means high upside for all those pass catchers. We got questions on social this week about Kyron Williams. He's definitely more of a concern of mine. I really don't know if Kyron Williams is going to have a good week. I thought he would be a lot better for fantasy up to this point of the season. But man, he just has not been great. He's not been great. So, yeah. Going over here, we've got Dale Sullivan, Chase Brown, Quentin Johnston, or Jalen Warren at the flex. I would go with Quentin Johnston coming off the big week, unless if we find out Justin Herbert's not playing. If that's the case, I would roll out Jalen Warren. I don't think Chase Brown presents as much upside. I still think he's worth the bench stash in case anything happens to Zach Moss or in case he laps him in that backfield. But I don't think he's worthy of a start yet. Quentin Johnston coming off a 2-touchdown game, his best game as a pro. You could consider the start if you have Herbert healthy. And then Jalen Warren, I would say could be worth the start. I don't love the play. But in a game that is going to be a brutal ground and pound from both these teams, I think Warren's got some more of a floor. I would definitely like Warren a lot more if they had Russ in, just because Russ is better for the running back's performance, where Justin Fields is going to take off and not check down. But there's the upside. From Stanley, do you watch all the games on Red Zone? Yes, from the 1 o'clock to 7, I always watch Red Zone. Even if my Jets are on, I'll pay attention to the Jets on my phone or on a computer, as well as the Red Zone games. But that's usually where I'm watching and getting my information. On Twitter, there is a few good follows that I recommend that shows some snap share. I forget the guy's last name. I'll actually see if I can pull it up real quick. The guy's name is Nathan. He's from PFF. He's probably one of the best Twitter follows for fantasy football advice. Nathan, Jahnke. He posts after every single game. So by the time I get to the Sunday night game and we're doing our recap of the week, I'll put in what my thoughts are on the week. And I can always reference those numbers to kind of reinforce it. You'll see some stats about the snap share from the guys, the targets, the like all that kind of vital information that you would not get on Red Zone. So Red Zone, you're only seeing the top plays, the top teams competing near the goal line, but you're not going to see in between the 20s, right? You need to see what's going on and how that team got there. That shows you the snap share. So for example, I would not have thought of this unless if I saw this on this article, which was Malik Neighbors in week 1 played 100% of the snaps. That's a very important piece of fantasy football information. Not a lot of receivers do that. And as much as we knew Malik Neighbors would be the one, you're not going to get that info. So quick shout out to my guy, Nathan, because I think he does an incredible job over there getting good information out there. Stanley, this channel's the best for fantasy. Appreciate that, Stanley. I know you've been tuning in for a couple of years now, so appreciate it. Dale, thank you. No problem. Deshaun, 16-team PPR. Start Jaleel McLaughlin, Tajay Spears, or I assume that's Curtis Samuel. I would go with Jaleel McLaughlin and the upside there. I think the Broncos are playing from behind, and Jaleel McLaughlin's been in there on more of those pass-catching opportunities and has the higher PPR upside. Give me a sec. Gonna sip some water because we've been talking for 15 minutes, still a little bit under the weather, but we want to make sure we're giving you all the content that you guys need. So for Mark, referencing some of those flex options instead, deep league, lost Mixon, looking for a flex on waivers. Naylor, Justice Hill, Madison. Don't even want to butcher that last name. McLaughlin, Leggett. I guess Jaden Reed's still the best option. I actually really like Justice Hill. He's somebody I have on my all boom team this week. The fact is he's been in there on so much of that passing down work and has a 52% snap share. So he's getting a lot more usage than we thought he would. And the fact is, if you could be checking it down to him like Lamar has been doing, it presents so much upside. And in a game that is the highest over on another week, the touchdown upside is super there. So I actually really like Justice Hill this week. I think he's a sneaky, really good fantasy football play. But I understand not wanting to pick him up and roster him unless if you have someone that's worth dropping. So would not fault you for pivoting there. Okay, getting back into the NFL slate, Chicago Bears at the Indianapolis Colts. Man, the only thing we really need to see is what the hell is going on with Caleb. I mean, he has not thrown a passing touchdown. We talked generational prospect. We got all this hype about him, and he just hasn't been living up to it. And I will say I was a little skeptical for him to start the season, just because A, he is a rookie. B, he does have a defensive coach. But even Bo Nix with a horrible or with an offensive coach still is not getting. I think he's a horrible football player, but that's a different situation. But Caleb, we really need to see more from him. This offense is too loaded not to see it. I think it's going to be a coaching change by the end of the year because the offense just looks so stale. But yeah, man, Caleb's a big question mark. And guys like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Dunze, they're going to be even bigger question marks. I think he's going to sort it out by the end of the year. But the question is when. I think next week we're probably going to be talking about Caleb Williams on your waiver wire because he's going to get dropped if he doesn't play well. And the Colts have been a pretty solid defense to this point of the year. From Lex, I have Pittman, drop downs for Madison or Spears. Depends on your running back room. I don't hate dropping downs for either one of those two and stashing them. But Michael Pittman has not looked like the best receiver on that team to this point of the year. He has just not been performing for fantasy. Alec Pierce and Josh Downs have looked better. So I would not fault you if you only wanted to keep one of them, but I would actually look to trade Pittman if you could. I know you have to trade low because he has not been great. I'd wait for the one good game and trade him and get something better. Or maybe somebody thinks that Anthony Richardson is still great and Pittman is a great receiver too, so has some upside. Maybe that's the move you want to make. But yeah, I don't love having two Colts receivers this year. So find a way to pick somebody up or drop somebody or trade Michael Pittman, but the situation, you're never going to play both of them. It's not possible. It's not Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. It's not Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. That offense just cannot be that this year. Just real quick, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If this is your first time watching, thank you so much. And we know I see a lot of the guys that always return. Thank you. If you can, drop a like, follow, subscribe. If you're watching on any platform other than YouTube, definitely head over here. Because if you see me pulling up the questions on the side, the only way we can do that right now is on YouTube. So definitely come over here and hit that notification bell. You roll over in bed 8:30 in the morning, check your phone. Top notification is always going to be us. Click it, drop your fantasy question, start sit. Mark, Justice Hill to the moon. Thanks for your time. Absolutely, Mark. Appreciate you tuning in. Deshaun, 12-team half PPR, Aaron Jones or White. And at tight end, Strange or Pat Frymuth. Is that Zamir White or is that Rashad White? If the question's Rashad, I go Rashad over Aaron Jones. If it's Zamir White, it's Aaron Jones over Zamir White. At tight end, Strange or Pat Frymuth. I would probably go with Strange. I don't love either option, but I do think that if I'm taking a shot or a flyer on tight end, I'm going with the higher upside and higher over-under game. I tend to lean that way for tougher fantasy decisions because the books say who's going to score more points. So the books are telling me that we're going to get more points from the Jags-Bills game than we would from the Steelers-Chargers, which I would totally estimate as well, but it reinforces it. Just so you know, the total on that, they're predicting about a touchdown and a half more points in that game than they are for the Chargers game. So I would definitely lean on Strange and take the risk there. From Stanley, the ESPN option, putting White back in the running back spot. Sorry, don't fully understand the question, but I still, for me, I'm just not trusting Zamir White. I think he's going to wind up on most waiver wires after this week if he's not already on the waiver wire. And this is his best opportunity. So if we see he does not play well against this team in this spot, there is no way we're going to trust him for the rest of the season. He's got to play well against Carolina, and he hasn't played well the first 2 weeks of the year in games where they have been winning for portions of the game. I know the Chargers and the Ravens are tougher matchups, but there's no way that I'm going to trust Zamir White. And I guess if you did want to take him, this would be the matchup to play him in, but I'm sorry, guys. He's just not panning out like a lot of people thought he would. From Jonathan Santiago, need one flex between Dobbins, JSN, or Bowers. Full PPR, 1 point for first downs. I'm going with Brock Bowers all day. Most receptions by a tight end through 2 weeks of a season. That is very impressive for the young man. And he's firing on a lot of cylinders. Again, going up against Carolina, very good matchup for him. I like Dobbins. I like JSN. I don't love the matchup for Dobbins this week. I think he's a fine start. I think he's probably a comfortable 10 points, but finding that end zone, which has been making his weeks on top of 130 yards, that's not going to happen this week. He will not put up 130 and a touchdown. If he does, he is the league winner, and I'm all in on JSN, just on this spot. And then Seattle hosting Miami. I do like the matchup for JSN, but I just tended to fade him more often. I don't he's going to be seeing a lot of, well, I guess DK would be seeing Ramsey for most of the game. JSN's still a good start. Don't get me wrong. But I think Miami is so decimated without Tua there that I think it's just going to be ground and pound. And I think Kenneth Walker and or Charbonnet, depending on Walker's health, are just going to run all over this team. So I don't mind the JSN start, but Bowers has shown so much safe floor. If you want the upside play, it's JSN, but Bowers is going to be such a safety blanket in his rookie year. Kind of incredible for him. Next game on the slate, Houston at Minnesota. I mean, what is Sam Darnold, man? I mean, my Jets, Aaron Rodgers finally looks great, but Sam Darnold looks way better than he did ever in this uniform. And I know that offense, that coach is way better than we've ever given him. But for your fantasy football teams, that's very important. There's one guy I really like. If he's on your waiver wires for a deep stash, Jalen Nailor. He looks really good for this team. And him and Darnold are quickly building a connection. Jefferson's already been dinged. Addison's hurt. With Hawkinson missing time, he could step up for a big role for this team, and they're constantly scoring points. So if this offense is going to continue to keep up this efficiency and this rate, you're going to see a lot of points from a lot of these Minnesota pass catchers. And Jalen Nailor is kind of worth the stash at this point. I've stashed him in a couple leagues to see if he overtakes Addison, that wide receiver 2 role. But yeah, guys, that's a big one. That's probably Nick and I are doing a segment now on our Thursday shows where we're talking about a really deep sleeper we like to add on for your waivers, a last spot on your bench, or even a spot start. That's a guy that definitely could have earned a spot this week. I went with Jalen Tolbert, who is having a very good amount of timeshare on the field, and we know that the Cowboys are desperate for a second pass catcher, but yeah. All right, real quick. Dale Sullivan, Carson Steele, Keon Coleman, Najee Harris, Michael Pittman Jr. at the flex. That's a tough one. I would probably go with, I don't love it, but I'd probably go with Pittman just because he still is leading the Colts in targets. So if AR can figure out the accuracy a little bit more this week, he does present more of a safe floor, high upside. Coleman coming off the goose egg. Najee, very low upside for a touchdown in this matchup. And Carson Steele, I just want to see what this running back room looks like before I'm willing to full-fledged start one of these guys. So I don't hate playing Steele. But I'd rather see Carson Steele get 15 touches on my bench than I would see him get, 7 in my starting lineup. He's really more of a fullback than a running back. I know he's listed at running back. But he's worth the roster spot. I don't think he's worth the start this first week. Stanley, DeAndre Swift or Aaron Jones. I would go with DeAndre Swift. The Bears going up against the Colts. Like I didn't mention this stat earlier. I forget where I saw it. I think it was on TikTok. The Colts are the only team to allow over 30 rushes in 2 games to a running back and over 100 something yards, which means that they're just allowing a lot of points to the running back position. So that says that DeAndre Swift should be in line for his best rushing game of the year against this defense. Next game on the slate, Philadelphia Eagles going to New Orleans. This one's interesting for actual football. For my gamblers that watch the show, the Eagles last week were a 3.5-point favorite in this game. The line has moved to New Orleans being a 2.5-point favorite. Statistically, when the line flips this much in 1 week, usually the underdog wins at a 60% rate. So that pretty much means that even though the Eagles are now the underdog in this game, the odds say 3 out of 5 times the underdog will win. So very curious to see how that goes. For fantasy, listen, we know the questions. Is New Orleans keeping this offense up? And can Saquon Barkley bounce back from that horrendous drop? And you can blame Sirianni all you want. You got to drop that. You got to catch that ball. Quick question from Andrew. Drop Lad McConkey for Juwan Jennings. If you need a spot start, maybe, but I'd rather have McConkey over the course of the year. So if you do not desperately need the start, I would not do it because I think McConkey presents so much more season-long upside than Juwan Jennings will. From Patrick, PPR, flex Higgins, Waddle, or Akers. I'm definitely going with Higgins for sure. Should I pick up Yoshi Voss as a safety option or just Stash Jens? No, Higgins has been removed from the injury report. He is 100% playing. The Washington Commanders allowed the most points to the wide receiver position for 2 straight seasons in fantasy football. I think T. Higgins has so much upside in this game. I think he could easily show up, drop 20 plus points for your team and make an impact and try and earn that contract. I think he's going to have a great season. I've been all in on him all off season, and this is the best matchup he has on the schedule. Definitely trust them. They're in a desperate spot. They are going to go full throttle, pedal to the metal, and they are going to do everything they can to decimate this Commanders team. They desperately need it. So I'm all in on Higgins this week. Andrews or Likely from Andrew. I still like Mark Andrews. I know Likely had the big game in week 1. We saw it come back down to earth in week 2, although he did have an opportunity for a big catch that got called away. Mark Andrews is just proven himself so long for fantasy where I think he belongs in your starting lineup. I need to see more Andrews struggling to really fade him, but going up against the Cowboys in a high over-under game, both of these guys should have big upside. I think that the Ravens are going to be playing from behind. I think the Cowboys are more likely to win this game. The Cowboys have only lost one regular season game at home in the last 2 seasons. So I think the Ravens are going to be playing from behind in a lot of this game. Stanley, Xavier Worthy over Zay Flowers. No, I would go with Zay Flowers. Xavier Worthy through 2 weeks has 2 touchdowns, and I believe between carries and pass catching, 6 total attempts. So the usage is not there. You will need a touchdown from Worthy to make his week. Whereas Zay Flowers, he kind of disappears in the second half, but his first half stat line is always so impressive. Andrew, full PPR pick 1, Cam Akers, Tank Dell, Michael Pittman. This is a tough one. I would lean with Pittman. I don't think Tank Dell. Tank Dell feels like the odd man out, unfortunately, in that room. It does feel like Stephon Diggs is going to have that role over him for the course of the season. Michael Pittman is still getting the highest usage on the team, and I know it has not been great, has not been a lot of fun, but I still think he is one of the better receivers on the team or maybe probably the best receiver on the team. That's how they're treating him. He has not looked better than Pierce or Downs did in week 1, week 2. But the usage is there. And for fantasy and definitely PPR, you want usage from your receiver. And Michael Pittman, he's close to, I think, 20 targets through 2 weeks. I'd rather go with that. From Scott Green, having trouble with wide receiver due to injuries, PPR. I hear you. I have one league where my third, fourth, fifth round picks all in a row, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, and T. Higgins have not had all 3 of them in a game. But real quick, back to your question. Starting Robinson, Downs, and Cook, have Dortch, Watson, Pittman on bench. Should I drop someone for Naylor or start someone on bench? I have Kupp on the IR. I would drop Christian Watson, and I would go get Jalen Naylor. Christian Watson just not getting the time on the field that we've seen from him, that we saw in the past that made him a superstar. It's kind of been more of the Jaden Reed show. And with all the injuries at quarterback, I'm definitely not feeling it this season for him as much as I did. He will present more upside later in the year. But Jalen Naylor, after this week, could be in a spot where he is a must start from how consistent he's been the first couple weeks. From Joe, with Joe Mixon out, you see the possibility of Tank Dell for a breakout game. Yeah, definitely. Minnesota is not a great secondary. But I think Tank Dell is going to look more like Tyler Lockett, where he's going to have 3 or 4 of those games that are like, wow, he's unbelievable. Why don't they use him more? But we just are not seeing it. It's been Stephon Diggs. It's really been Nico Collins. And then Joe Mixon's been so efficient on the ground. So to your point with Mixon out, yeah, if Cam Akers is inefficient at running back, we saw it last year. This team is only going to pass the ball, and that's why we saw a bunch of receivers break out. I like that upside for him. On the flip side, he just has not been good enough for fantasy where you can't trust him in a spot start. Unfortunately, I do think I still love the player. I love the talent. I would be fine rolling him out, but there are better options out there for sure. From Stanley, isn't Pittman questionable? Let me go take a quick look at the injury report. I did see that he was dinged up, but I think I saw a report last night that it was leaning towards him playing. So let's see what the injury is for him. So back calf injury, did not practice, and yes, his game status is questionable. So we'll see. I do think it's trending towards playing, but if not, at least it's in the 1 o'clock slate, so you can know to bench him. Feel free to drop your questions about Pittman if you are concerned that he's not playing. From Victoria, this isn't necessarily a question about today's game, but I have a question about Aaron Rodgers, knowing you're a Jets fan, being excited for him to join the Jets last year and having it be a bust. Did you plan on putting him on your team this year? Is he on your team? Would you play him any upcoming games, or do you have any concerns about him? I don't love him for fantasy. He still has not had a 300-yard game in 2.5 years. Last Thursday was his best game of the year, and that was an opportunity where he should have been a stud. Next week, going up against the Broncos, Pat Surtain is one of the best corners in football. Will shadow Garrett Wilson. I expect that to be the Breece Hall and Braylon Allen show. So I don't think you're going to need to play Aaron Rodgers, and I do think there's better options for fantasy. But yes, he definitely did earn a spot on your team after last week. Factually yours, how valuable do you think Jaden Reed is if Jordan Love's injury keeps him out in the future? Not very valuable. Malik Willis is a horrible quarterback. I will keep pounding the desk. I've said it plenty of times on the show. The one thing he can do really well, Malik Willis, is turn around and hand the ball to the running back. That's about it. So Jaden Reed is not going to present much fantasy upside. It did look like Jordan Love had a shot to play this week. I would guess he's back next week. But I don't think he's I don't think he's going to have that superstar upside without Jordan Love. It's just not there. And we saw it. Week 1, we saw it. He was the wide receiver 1 on the week. He was on the all-boom team. I really loved him going into the year. I loved him in that spot. But Malik Willis is horrible. He is not a fantasy friendly quarterback, which is kind of odd because he's such a rushing upside guy. And usually you don't need to be good at football to be good at fantasy football. But man, he is just bad at football, at fantasy football. It does not work for him. From Shades, Carr or Purdy, I have Mason if that matters. That definitely matters. For sure. If I am the 49ers this game, I'm not benching. I am not benching what's it called? I'm not benching Mason or any of those guys because this is a game where they should dominate. I know both these teams dealing with injuries. Kyle Shanahan has destroyed Sean McVay for his career. I like it that way. Derek Carr going up against the Eagles. The Eagles on a short week. I go with Derek Carr in this spot. I think it's the better matchup. The higher over under on the week, the higher upside. Derek Carr has looked great. And the Eagles have ranked bottom 5 and everything on defense. The Saints team should really look good against them. From Dale, half PPR start 2, Keon Coleman, Demarcus Robinson, George Pickens, or Michael Pittman. Demarcus Robinson. And then the question for me is between Pickens and Pittman. I don't mind going with Pickens in this spot. Pickens had 2 big plays called back against him. If he had those 2 plays, he's the wide receiver 19 on the season right now instead of wide receiver 42. I'm sure there's a ton of players you could do that for, but Michael Pittman has been the safer floor. For full PPR, I prefer Pittman. I prefer Pickens' explosiveness and anything less. Stanley, have Rodgers, had 21 points. Great fantasy game for him, but I don't know how much he can keep it up over the course of the season. As much as I love him, I love my guy number 8 at the moment. We'll see if I love him, a year from now. But listen, for fantasy, we need to see more consistency on that front before we can really trust and roll him out every week. Bench whoever goes up against absolutely. I have Mike Evans on my all bust team for exactly that. Listen, man, he is probably the best shadow corner in the league, and that is coming from a Jets fan who loves Sauce Gardner. Surtain's going to follow him across the entire field. Godwin's got the upside being in the slot in this matchup, but Surtain definitely. Surtain's one of the best corners in football. You're just going to want to bench whoever's going up against him every week. I guarantee Nick and I have him on the all bust team every single week that's happening. Real quick, while we got a sec, going to do another quick plug if you guys don't mind. Like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. Hit that notification bell. Every 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are live answering your questions. Usually, I am joined by my host, Nick. This week, we got to run it solo. So appreciate everybody for still tuning in and dropping those fantasy questions. Next game on the slate, Chargers at Pittsburgh. Lowest over-under game. You do not want to play that many fantasy options in this game. Low touchdown upside. I'm not saying bench everybody, but we definitely want to see from Justin Herbert. If Herbert does not play, I'm benching pretty much every single Charger. I don't think there's anyone you comfortably start, including J.K. Dobbins. If I'm looking at the Pittsburgh side of things, I do like Najee. I like that he probably gets 20 touches this game. I do think Pickens is a fine play against the Chargers. Don't love it, but he should be better than he was in week 1 and 2. Week 1 and 2, he had horrible matchups for the cornerback position. And listen, Justin Fields, if he's not going up against Herbert, it's going to be 3-0 after this week. Kind of crazy to think about, but yeah. Next game, Denver at Tampa Bay. Here's where I want to pivot. I think Mike Evans, you could definitely bench. Baseball, you mentioned this earlier. Pat Surtain, best shadow corner in football, and he's going to follow Mike Evans. Usually when you see a shadow corner, they're playing on a wide receiver 60+% of the time, 60% meaning they're following them across the field. Pat Surtain's above 75%. So 3 out of 4 plays, Mike Evans is getting covered by this guy no matter what, maybe more than that. So I expect Tampa to run the ball more. They're a 6.5 point favorite, implied point total of, I believe, 24. So they're going to rely on ground and pound to win this one. Next up, we get to the 4 o'clock slate. Denver Broncos. No, sorry about that. Carolina at the Las Vegas Raiders. I think Carolina is going to pull off the upset here. Raiders coming off a super high of beating them Raiders coming off the high of beating the Ravens last week. Carolina has not looked great, but Andy Dalton in the 2 games where he gets the rub has averaged over 300 passing yards. I like Deontay Johnson. I like Adam Thielen in spot starts if you need them from injury this week. It is a risky play, so feel free to come roast me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Come into the show. Come roast me last week if I make you lose your week, but I think there's more upside to them winning your week with all the injuries at the receiver position. Factually yours, Demarcus Robinson have long-term value if he can prove himself in these next 3 weeks without Nakua and Kupp. I would say no. You're going to need to see one or both of these guys sidelined for Demarcus Robinson to be a week-to-week trustworthy fantasy play. I don't think I think there's a lot of receivers that step up when there needs to be the wide receiver one, and it just always reverts back to the mean. Now, if Demarcus Robinson plays well this week, he's a must start until one of these guys get back. There's no questions asked about that. But I don't know if by week 14, unless these guys are out again, numerous injuries, both have injury risks, you're going to comfortably start him. So if that's the case, that's why I prefer a guy like Jalen Naylor over Demarcus Robinson on your team, on your bench, because the upside at the end of the year is way higher. Whoops, thanks, Joe, for letting me know I was muted. So real quick, don't know what you missed there. Miami at Seattle, next game on the slate. Skylar Thompson and the boys flying from the southeast all the way up to the northwest. Longest flight in football that you can have, Miami to Seattle. Unless if you're going over to the London games or the Brazil game, obviously, but continental U.S. game. Not a great flight. Skylar Thompson and the boys, yes, they got the extended game going up against Seattle, who has been feisty and fantastic this year. I think the Seahawks absolutely roll them. If we're talking for fantasy, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane are the 2 guys you can start. Jalen Waddle belongs on your bench. And then Seattle, DK, running back, JSN, if you want to. Those are the guys that you roll out in this spot. This is what I want to see. Skylar Thompson off extended rest. Kyle Shanahan system. The Shanahan system usually means any quarterback that can pass accurately will make it work. So let's see if he can make it work. He did not look great last year with the team, but another year in the system, another year on the team, maybe we see a little bit more from him. From Tommy, Whittington will be the Kupp Puka role in that offense. McVay drafted him for a reason. Fits the mold. That's why he's in Kupp spot in the slot. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think there's a lot of pass catchers on this team that we like for fantasy. I still like Tyler Johnson. I think he's a very talented receiver. Demarcus Robinson over the course of some seasons has been great. And then, yeah, I think Whittington has some upside in this team. I think that there's a spot for him. And we'll see how good he can be. And you're right. Sean McVay knows talent. Listen, he's figured out every running back, just about every receiver to be efficient no matter who the quarterback is in the system. So I'm not going to doubt Sean McVay at all. I think this is a fine take, and I think he's worth the fantasy stash, but I'm still not comfortably starting him in this matchup. From Dale Sullivan, Rico Dowdle, Ty Chandler, Jalen Warren for RB2 and half PPR. Yeah, that bad. Yep, early on, you're right. Not the best spot to be in. Probably got some injuries, I imagine. I think we talked about them earlier. If I could go with any of them, it's probably Ty Chandler, just because he's been the more efficient running back there, and that is the best looking offense from the 3 of them. Rico Dowdle, you could start, but the team literally just said this week it's looking like Dalvin Cook is going to start leaning into getting some touches because the running back room does not look great. They also threw Deuce Vaughn in there for a bunch of touches last week. So Rico Dowdle really has not earned the starting spot that we thought. He could earn a spot on the waivers next week if he keeps down this poor production, where I think Ty Chandler presents the highest upside here. Maybe not the safest floor, but I don't think any of these guys are scoring more than 10 points without finding the end zone. I think Chandler has the highest upside because they're going to go to Zeke on the goal line, not to Dowdle. Jefferson or Shaheed, yeah, we're going with Jefferson. We don't really need to. Shaheed could definitely outscore him, but you do not bench Justin Jefferson for practically anybody. Factually yours. See, you're starting Justice Hill over Madison this week. Any reason why? Sure, I'll give you the reasoning. I have Justice Hill on my all boom team. Just pulling up my notes on the other my dual monitor. The Cowboys in the last 2 seasons, I believe, are 16-1 at home. They're not including the playoffs. Last year, for fantasy, they have been great at home, and that just means Justice Hill is going to be out there and going to need more reps because he plays when they're down from behind. He has a 52% snap share in week 1 and week 2 of the season. He has been out there a lot more than we have thought. And last week, it got reinforced because they were winning for most of the game. I know they winded up losing, but he got a lot of reps on that team. Against the Chiefs in week 1, 8 targets in a game script that was not favorable to him. The Ravens are going to need to pass the ball. And last week, we saw what happened to the Cowboys when Alvin Kamara got some work, 65 yards and a receiving touchdown. So I'm just saying that Justice Hill, we just watched Alvin Kamara cook this team. I think Justice Hill has just as much upside to do that. And I do like Madison this week in a start against Carolina. I don't think it's a bad play, but I do think Justice Hill has the higher upside. I do think if you have Madison, it's probably the smarter, less speculative play to put him in your lineup with that guaranteed workload against one of the worst defenses in football. But I really do think Justice Hill has explosive upside this week. Not even going to try and say that name. Ferguson or Kincaid at tight end. Give me Dalton Kincaid. I still think he's more talented. I like both these options. Both teams going to score a lot of points this week, which is what you want from the tight end. Can you go through that league and give matchup predictions for the league? Which league are you talking about? I'm a little confused on the question. Feel free to give me more details. Happy to give you whatever you're looking for. Just real quick, we'll get into the next matchup. Baltimore at Dallas, highest over under second highest over under of the week at 48.5 points. Dallas Cowboys look really good at home. Baltimore looks really good against the NFC. If you look at the gambling numbers, these are 2 of the best bets in NFL history. Dallas Cowboys at home, Baltimore Ravens on the road, or Lamar Jackson on the road, Mike McCarthy at home with the Dallas Cowboys is the numbers. They are both pretty much unstoppable. I believe Baltimore in Lamar's career is 20-1 against Baltimore is 20-1 against the NFC in his career. Dallas Cowboys are 16-1 at home for fantasy. So one of these teams is getting an outlier. Baltimore is the favorite on the road. I don't hate it. I think Dallas is not going to have horrible back-to-back games. Oh, okay. Got it. All right. Hi, Dave. Thanks for stopping by. I would love to do that, the Sunday show. I'm a little bit under the weather. Probably not the best spot for it. Maybe next week when we have some time, stop by again. We could get you some more of that. I'd be happy to give you some breakdowns there. Brady, Juwan Jennings, Brian Thompson, Shakir, or Akers, full PPR. I actually really like any of these 4 options. I think they're all good plays. So when I do say that, I would go with who I think is the most talented on the board, which is Brian Thomas. He has the most upside to be the wide receiver 1 on his team of this group. The primary use, some of the highest touchdown upside and one of the highest over-unders on the week. So give me Brian Thomas for the explosive game. Devin Singletary or Travis Etienne? I'm going with Travis Etienne. Not going to give too much breakdown there. Jaylen Warren or Deontay Johnson in flex full PPR? I would go with Deontay Johnson. I think I mentioned it a couple times before. Andy Dalton in these as a Carolina Panther, when he gets the start and replaces the backup, I think you've replaced Darnold and or Baker at some point. Averages over 300 passing yards in that game. Raiders defense is not great. And Max Crosby popped up on the injury report last night. He's dealing with something. I don't know if it's trending towards him playing or not, but that just means more upside in that spot. All right, next game on the slate. We are looking at the San Francisco 49ers at the Rams. Historically, Kyle Shanahan has destroyed Sean McVay in this conference. Expect the game script to be like this, as it always is. Brandon Ayuk, heavy pass opportunity, especially with no Deebo Samuel, no George Kittle, no CMC this week. He is the one Avenger left on that team. I expect the Rams to be playing catch up. Expect Jordan Mason to get a ton of runs. Expect the market. If you have your Rams, this is a good spot start. Underdogs by a touchdown. I think they've only beaten Shanahan once in the Shanahan McVay era, and they play twice a year, which is not a very good record for McVay. So every trend points towards this being copy and paste the last few years. 49ers win big. That offensive line for the Rams is depleted. I believe they still have 3 offensive linemen hurt. So Kyren Williams has been struggling. I think he's a trade for because of this issue. But I would totally understand moving him to the bench. Next game, highest over under, one of the more fun games to watch on the week. Detroit Lions at the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray has looked like a superstar this year, been great. Marvin Harrison Jr. said, "Hold my beer" to Malik Neighbors last week after outperforming him in the 4 o'clock slate. Wide receiver 1 on the week. I think the Cardinals look great. I think the Lions look great. I say play anybody you can for fantasy in this matchup. The one I really love is Jameson Williams. He's getting a lot more first reads than Amon-Ra that would typically go Amon-Ra's way in this matchup. So I really think that he presents a lot more upside than we've seen. And I think he's truly here to stay. I don't think it's been a fluke the first 2 games. The advanced metrics are saying that he is a really talented receiver. They used a first-round draft capital on him. He got suspended the first in his rookie season and hasn't really gotten that full opportunity. It looks like he's definitely solidified that role. We hope we could see bounce backs from Laporta this week. And then Arizona, the only person I consider benching is James Conner. The Lions over the last 2 years have allowed the least amount of points to running backs in fantasy, so the matchup is not very great there. Moving into Sunday Night Football, primetime, Kirk Cousins hosting Kansas City. I think the Chiefs absolutely roll. We get Rashee Rice in the slot in the middle. He just had his first explosive play with Patrick Mahomes. We hope to see that trend continue. I don't love Xavier Worthy in this matchup. He just is not getting enough usage yet to securely place him in your lineup. Yes, he presents a ton of upside because any single play he can go for a touchdown, but you can say that for about 20 guys in this league. We need to see him getting more of that 6-7 targets before he's worth the start of the league. Right now, I think he's only averaging 2. So not great there. On Atlanta side of the ball, they deserve to be 0-2. I know Kirk Cousins marched them down the field and they'd be in real panic mode. I like Kansas City in this matchup. I think Atlanta will be trailing, but the Chiefs have the number 1 defense in football right now, maybe number 2. I don't love this matchup for Atlanta. I don't think that a lot of the fantasy options look good. I think Bijan will play well. I don't trust Drake London against Trent McDuffie. And we got to see what we can see from Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts going up against Travis Kelce, but really that linebacking core. But Kyle Pitts, we need to see take that next step. We have not seen it. We have not seen that workload go up. So the question really is for this receiving room. We thought we knew what we were getting after the first 2 weeks. No, it's still a question mark. Which makes them all scary starts. Monday Night Football. We got 2 games on Monday night, so it should be fun. Jacksonville at Buffalo, 7:30 p.m. Buffalo, big favorites in this game. I think Jacksonville has not looked great through the first couple weeks. Buffalo off a big rest week. Expect James Cook to cook. Khalil Shakir has been the most reliable pass catcher for Buffalo. Dalton Kincaid, you still trust the upside of. None of the tight ends have really looked great for fantasy outside of Brock Bowers, and then that one explosive likely week. So that's really what you got here. I would say that's the guys you want to start on the Jacksonville side of the ball. We watched Buffalo absolutely shut down the pass catchers for the Dolphins last week while Tua was playing. So I am a little fearful there. But I do think you have enough options in this game, and I think that the game script will be better, and Trevor should be better than Skylar Thompson. So if we see that, we'll see better performance. My big question for the game is still both of these two receiving cores. Keon Coleman looked great in week 1, throws a goose egg in week 2. Khalil Shakir looks safe, but not really as explosive. Then on Jacksonville, I think it's Brian Thomas Jr., but Gabe Davis is doing some cardio out there right now, getting a ton of reps and not a lot of usage. So we'll see what we see from that matchup. Real quick to Stanley, Malik Neighbors or Tank Dell. I go Malik Neighbors, and Christian Kirk or David Montgomery. I'd go with Montgomery. Christian Kirk in 2 receiver sets has been getting filtered out. It's been Gabe Davis, and it has been Brian Thomas Jr. David Montgomery presents a lot more touchdown upside in a higher over-under scoring game on the week. And then last game of the slate, Washington at Cincinnati. I love the Bengals in this spot. I think T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, you get your bounce backs there. I love Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki's looked great for fantasy. I think, listen, Cincinnati should bounce back. They should get a much needed win, and then they walk to Carolina for the next game. So hopefully Cincinnati can get those bounce backs in for fantasy. Will be great. And then on Washington, none of those pass catchers have been good. We don't like those options for fantasy. But Jaden Daniels has been fantastic. Last week, not as great. Week 1, fantastic. Cincinnati, not a great defense. Cincinnati in 2 weeks has the Baltimore, I believe. So you could see a little bit of overlooking these next 2 games. I think Washington comes out swinging, does not win the game, but for fantasy, I think you'll see better numbers in this primetime matchup. Dale Sullivan, appreciate the insight this morning. Any thoughts on defense streaming options this week? I got Dallas, but not liking the matchup. Yeah, I definitely moved Dallas to your bench. I don't think they're worth dropping because they are still so good and present so much upside with how many turnovers they force. I like the Buccaneers going up against the Ravens. Buccaneers going up against the Broncos, apologies, if you can still get them. Pittsburgh is probably rostered in your league, but Pittsburgh going up against the Chargers, if the Chargers are missing Justin Herbert's a great spot start. I like Chicago against Indy. Anthony Richardson has not been accurate, has been turning the ball over, so you do worry about those explosive plays, but I do think you get it back in the turnover matchup. And then if no Jordan Love, it's still yet to be TBD. Either side of the Green Bay Tennessee matchup, I think you'll do just fine for fantasy. All right, guys, thank you. We've reached the hour mark. Appreciate everybody for stopping by, tuning in live every single Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. We got our next episode coming out on Tuesday, waiver wire takeaways from the week. Thursday, all boom, all bust teams, your start sits, everything you need for fantasy during the week. And then next week, for week 4, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, so this way you can roll over in your bed, pick up your phone, see that button, and just drop your fantasy questions right away. Appreciate everybody for tuning in to the solo show this week. We'll have Nick back next week, and we will get into it. Appreciate you guys.